Hello, everyone. This is Magic Paper, or Cordio, or not Cordio, depending on how you feel about me, or how you know me, or just Nick. You can call me Nick. That's fine too. That's my name. So today I want to talk about the Luxoria conflict destruction, which takes place in a Pepper City hospital. But before we begin, I would like to talk about a couple of things just to clear it up and clear the air. I will not be reviewing my own writing, and when I went to grade this, I had asked everyone else about what Cordio should have gotten because that is not fair for me to grade myself. Now, if I did grade myself, I would have probably given myself one less red because I feel like Cordio didn't do as much as some of the other people in the blog. However, after having spoken with everyone, they all said give Cordio 4. They agreed on that, and they said that seemed fair. So, despite what I thought, I went with what my friends said, the people who were in the log itself. However, again, I will not be reviewing my own writing. I will be talking about my own writing, but I will not be reviewing it. I will be talking about everyone else's writing, though, and how I feel about it, and how I am reviewing it, of course, but not for myself. Now, this log is very important for a lot of reasons. This is the hospital that Jean was taken to after Fusen nearly killed her, from Vegeta, which, if you haven't seen it already, that is another log you should go just read right now before this. It's like, well, actually, there's a bunch of logs you should read before this one. Primarily, the last breath, or the one or two after that leads up to this. There are a couple of other recovery logs that lead into this. However, I don't think that they are necessary for the greater context of this log itself. That said, let's move forward. This log has Goliath, Jean, Cordio, Estroma, and Ariel. Also, starring me as the narrator, and Saru as the other narrator. It was a big log. We needed two of them. And there was more that I wanted to do that Sarah did not cover, which was intentional. However, had I gone back into this, if I were to go redo this, I would make sure that any of the characters I was playing under narration would not meet with Cordio, because it would be so much easier to just change that. However, it didn't work out like that. Funny enough, I actually had plans because of this to remove Cordio from the equation by having the secondary antagonist of the log basically knock him out or like heavily injure him and get him out of the picture just so I didn't have to deal with that. So that's not what happened, but I'll get into that later as I go through the log. Another quirk about this log is that it was originally supposed to take place in Sal's laboratory. However, there was a better opportunity for the hospital, and I took that. There was also a general outline that didn't get used. Daru kind of changed things way more than I expected. However, I enjoyed this far more than the outline that I had given him previously, so I have no complaints. I am also glad this did not take in Salias lab, because that leaves less room for creativity, I feel like. A hospital setting you don't really see too often get destroyed, which is why it's called Destruction. Spoilers, I guess. The start of this log has Jean and everyone else just laying down and staying still, Jean goes to Ariel's room, Saliath goes to Ariel's room, they're all together. Cordio's downstairs asleep because it's night, and things are normal. Things are fairly normal right now. Until a few minutes later, or maybe even moments, things hit the fan hard. Icer plows through the fucking hospital walls and takes Sal with him, and they fight in the hallway. Because it's in the hallway, in the middle of a hospital upstairs, you kind of have to be careful of how you interact with the environment, because if you fuck up, you're killing civilians. Which is why Sal had the smart idea to lower the floor, basically send himself to the ground, along with Icerian. And to clarify, by Icerian I mean Changeling, but I've always called them Icers, so I am going to continue that for this review. I think anything is better than calling them the Freezer race, like in Xenoverse. While this is happening, though, I actually rolled a die to see if Cordio could hear Ariel yelling, because she yelled for Cordio, and on Discord, Saliath was like, yo, sound vibrates. Like, yeah, but look at my roll, and I rolled a 1. So for one round, I made him completely oblivious to what was going on. And then for the next few rounds, I had Cordio chasing and going upstairs and following people around. It was quite entertaining. It was like Benny Hill, because Cordio did nothing but chase for a few rounds. It was kind of funny, because like by the time he caught up, they were in like a dark room, and then like he grabbed on to the Icer assassin, and then if he had not let go, he would have been like flung with them, like he marching to another wall outside. At the same time, however, Jean and Ariel end up fighting two other assassins that killed some civilians in another room, stopping at nothing to get rid of Saliath as his target. Ariel was a secondary target. That's who the family was targeting, Saliath and Ariel. There was actually sensory deprivation devices set outside the hospital in places. This was to prevent people being able to sense and making it way more difficult to find out where others were. And this was just a plot device for me to say, yeah, we can't find anyone. Like, you have to actually look. And part of that is because the family is aware of Ariel's sensory abilities because of what happened in the log in the ruins. And their motivations here are to kill Celia. Well, at least try to kill him. They were trying to weaken him. Something I didn't mention to anyone, but I think Sarah played this excellently anyways, is that they can't have Celia dead. Celia knows where the core is. The core to the Cryo Archon, which I don't think I've ever really talked about publicly, but it's the core from the Cryo Archon is a very powerful core device, and without knowing how to use it, I would say its properties are a tier 2. But if someone knows what it is and knows how to use it properly, it is a higher tier, which I haven't really decided on, because I feel like having a tier be above like 5 would be insane. But the thing is, like the Cryo Archon, the core was a higher tier than what the Cryo Archon was. The Cryo Archon was tier 2, but the core is a higher tier than that. The Cryo Archon was built to be able to maximize his own strength without limiting the factors of the actual core, which is why he was only tier 2. If he was built differently or had access to the full functionality of the core, he may have been tier 3 or tier 4. I don't know. I haven't really decided on a tier for that yet. Anyways, this is getting off topic. So they actually need Goliath alive. They just wanted to beat the shit out of him and then force him to give it up, which almost happens. So once they're outside, Cordio, my character does like a flip over the icer, shooting key blasts at it, and then Sal is shooting at it and trying to fuck it up, and then it does something I think is one of my favorite parts of this log, only because of what happens afterward. He grabs both Cordio and Goliath and slams them into the fucking hospital walls, into the support beams, like throughout the entire fucking place, into the other parking lot where they get slammed. My character manages to escape. Goliath does not get lucky. We both rolled on this. And as soon as Goliath was about to get slammed into the ground and get flattened like a pancake, Cordio grabs him out of danger's way and saves him. And then from there, after Cordio got slammed to the wall, though, he ended up breaking his leg, which didn't need to happen, but I wanted to do it for a cool moment that happens later, which takes a second, but Cordio asks Goliath to blow his leg off. Technically, Cordio could have, beamed or blasted his own leg off, but I felt like having Sal do it was a better moment than having Cordio do it to himself. So Goliath gets his shotgun tonfa thing once he's free from being flattened into a goddamn pancake, and then shoots Cordio's leg off, and it blasts Goliath into the air, and then uses this to fucking end the icer. Yeah, okay, so he used his thing. He blasts off of Cordio's leg. He slams into the ground. It would shake I'll just read this. Okay. At the moment of awakening once more, he found himself whisked away by the arms. He was airborne for a moment above Cordio. He didn't know Cordio, but no sane man would ask someone to remove a limb without a plan. No one, right? There was concern for Cordio, and in making he had barely... Right, and then the bright light from the hospital... Ariel, Jean, referring to something else I'll talk about in a minute. Rage took over as the man reignited the rage-induced key, now powering the glow, returning to his arms. He would form a shield above him, kicking off from it and slamming it right into the leg with the shotgun's barrel, as when the impact happened, a loud burst went off. The ground crackled, a ghostly blue energy seeping up it as Sal would roar out screaming, "Come on, you bastard! Rending blades! Cordio, together!" He challenged the Saiyan's own genetics starting to show as his hair grew wilder and eyes more feral. And there was a rumble. And as the first spike came out, a blood-curdling scream came from Sal, who wanted nothing but malice for the creature. At this point, it was safe to say that Cordio's leg was removed. The ground would then erupt around the creature. Spike after spike came out in an arc along the parking lot, all aimed at the creature as the man let his rage roar. I don't know if you can hear that clap. I'll find out in editing. If not, maybe I'll add in a clapping sound. This is a result of Sal getting his ass kicked. We actually had something else planned that we were going to do after he blew Cordio's leg off, but it didn't really end up happening, which is fine. This is a cool enough moment for Sal. And now let me just read what Hypo narrated here. The slam into the ground would shake the entire square kilometer. The icer's fierce might was on full display, unveiled as a rage-induced blow that annihilated the ground beneath. The basement of the hospital had begun to collapse inward, and soon the entire first floor would be following suit. The collapse of the first also meant the destruction of the second. Countless patients were still stuck in their rooms, either threatened by assassins or the demolition, leaving Ariel and Jean in a dilemma between choosing them or their closer friends. All the while, Cordio's quick wit had caused Goliath's life to leave danger's embrace. The forest began to sing Goliath's song, their whisking leaves drowned out by the Saiyan's rage and cord-leering shriek. For even the shortest of time, glimpses, the Icer's heart had been touched by a matched savage spirit. Had he not hidden his face with mask armor, perhaps he'd have even forced out a sincere smile brought by a new challenge. The aura Saliah threw out became a manifestation of spikes from below the ground, countless traps layering the battleground and becoming end incarnate for the Icer's dark and bleak future. There was only one way to fight this: embrace it head on. A charge from the Icer went straight for Saliah, his march enduring endless pain from the attacks, destroying his armor. Within seconds, it became nothing more than decorative. For new, several dozen holes in his frame made him appear more like cheese, like white cheese. He became deflated, and his run ended on his knees, inches away from Saliah. Had it not been for this gambit, perhaps he'd have smashed Saiyan into the forest beyond the combat zone. Had he not been an Icer, unique with hardiness, he'd already been dead further in the distance. Puny fucking Saiyan. Ow! How did you force me onto my knees? I'm sorry if that sounds cringe. I'm just trying to put emphasis on what the text says. There's also some other stuff that happens. Mainly that I introduced Zara again for the Ruins log, who was spared. And then there's Dav, one of the Luxoria one of the Luxoria family's stronger people. At some point, Sal had like all of his projectiles about and inside the Icer. But Dav used a key-disruption grenade to basically stop the Icer from dying and getting mauled to death by spikes, which happens anyways, but it just takes longer. And that's actually part of the reason why Cordy and Sal got like launched into the fucking concrete of the hospital, because they couldn't use Key for an entire round. It just got completely destroyed. Zara gets a shot in, but it doesn't really do anything. I just wanted to have him be there, and I have him out and about. So the other part of this log is the other fights. So Jean and Ariel fight two other assassins, and it gets messy. I think they were supposed to be tier 1 assassins. However, I think one of them was tier 2. Just based on how the writing is. Because even though Ariel is still learning, I feel like she would have knocked a tier 1 out. A tier 1 NPC out pretty easy. Just given the fact that because they're an NPC at tier 1. I mean, I know that it's technically not easy to do that, but if you can make a tier 3 NPC a fucking raid boss, you can make a tier 1 NPC able to be beat by a tier 2 rather easily. And Ariel and Jean do really fucking well in this spot, in this part of the log. And again, this is probably where I would have split up the POVs until the final act. Jean is traumatized. She does not want to move. She is traumatized. No, her fight with Fusen really fucked her in the head mentally. Her fight with Fusen, however you say it, really messed with Jean's head mentally. And so it being exhibited here, I thought was really interesting. Ariel trying to talk her into fighting so they could survive and wouldn't die, and it just not doing anything for Jean. And Jean was just paralyzed. It almost kind of reminded me of during the Mountain of the Frozen Lightning Spear, when they were fighting the Silver Insignia Soldier. Cordio was scared out of his mind. He hesitated. He couldn't move. And he had flashbacks to his home, his past, Namek village, of them all saying he couldn't do anything. He couldn't save his friends. And that if he didn't help, that they would all die and he was going to die. And that there was nothing he could do. It reminded me of that. But what got Cordio out of it was his own determination, his own willpower to want to survive, to want to live. And he does it. That's where Cordia does his first Ki Blast. Which I think I mentioned in the Arc Talk thing that I did about it, which I'd like to go back into at some point. The difference here, however, is that Jean can't pull herself out of this. Jean is stuck. She's in a loop, and this loop is disallowing her from being able to act properly. What changes, however, and the big difference here, is that Fusen is in Jean's head. Not literally there, but mentally. Like just pretending. I guess pretending isn't the right word, but he's in Jean's mind, according to Jean. Like just Jean. Fusen isn't using the back of any Kaioshin or anything, or shoulder. I guess it doesn't matter where they touch the Kaioshin. Which was a little bit of a discussion point in the Discord and the DMs. I talked about it. I was like, I think it would have been better if Fusen was actually speaking to Jean telepathically, and the big question was, why would Fusen do that? And I think that the Room of Spirit and Time Part 2 by Genesis has the answer, which is all about Saki or whatever. I thought it was a really cool concept where you learn by fighting, and it speaks more than words. And I think that could have definitely been a whole talking point about it, but I'm not saying to change it. I think it's too late for that, and I also think that it's not my choice. I'm not the writers in this situation, but that is just how I still personally feel about it. Again, I'm not saying to change it. I don't think you should change it. I'm just saying that I think it would have been better if it was done telepathically. Anywho, this Susan being in Jean's mind actually snaps her out of it. Because he's like, oh, you're all fucking dead. You're gonna die. Your friends are gonna die. You're gonna get them killed. You can't do anything. Well, I don't think he actually says you can't do anything. Let me go look really quick. He calls her a pussy in her head. Let me actually just read one of these from Fusen, from in Jean's mind. The memory of Fusen's demonic form became ever more clear in the miasma of one's mind. Really? You're that pussy going to back out of a fight from an enemy weaker than me? Weaker than most you face? You're gonna do this right now. Pathetic. That bitch is a pacifist and she's making you look like a wimp. You'll never rid yourself of me if you keep this up, not until you die. And then from Jean, his voice, it echoed in her soul. In a split second, she wasn't in that wrecked hospital room in Pepper City. It was in a dark night in a forest on Vegeta in the wolf's den. Stood across from her, staring at her with disappointment in his gaze. Maybe I'm a coward. I fire. I can't even feel the embers. I'm so scared. I don't believe in me anymore. Let me go to the next part. From Fusen. Finally, Fusen's full form could be seen within the wolf's den. The very man she faced that day, she found to be at the absolute worst of what a man can, the most desperate, beaten down soul that there could be. The very bottom of the pit that few enter, and now she appeared to be nearing it. You know that what they say. People often die alone. Well, you can't find faith within yourself. Neither will your friends find faith. That's just how it is. You saw me, a lone man. All I had was that faith. You saw me alone. You aren't alone. You find that faith. So will they. It's up to you. No one can change that for no one. So choose. Bleed out and die here, or find it. Better find it quick. That guy looks like he's ready to turn you into dust, and Miss Pacifist is occupied. And now, the next part, I'm not going to read, because I think Jean's post here, after all that, is worth reading yourself, so I won't read this. It's really good, though. And I think everyone should go read this. And this whole section, with them fighting the assassins, this whole section where Ariel and Jean are fighting the two other assassins that are not the main one, alone would be 6-4 in my opinion. With all the stuff that's going on, they would be 6 greens, 4 reds, by itself. But what Ariel does later, which I'll talk about again later, netted her a 7-5. It was perfect, in my opinion. I think everyone else that worked on this log thought so too, besides feeding themselves. You know, you're your worst critic, which is also true with me. But Jean snaps out of it and kicks this other freaking assassin into the sky like he was from Team Rocket. Like, boom! Through the roof, through the sky. And that's what that flash was from earlier when I mentioned Salaya talking about it. Also, Ariel gets stabbed in the back defending Jean, so that's fun. That's actually really important later, as Ariel will bleed out throughout the rest of the log. But Ariel gets stabbed defending Jean. Actually, I can read this out. I will read this out. Because this is after the Fusen stuff, I believe. Just check really quick. Okay, yeah. Ariel's punches were having her effect for sure. She knew her opponent didn't have much more fight in them. Even if she had to take one more attack, she knew she could take it. But that wasn't what was in her mind. It wasn't about winning the battle, but making sure they survived. Jean's desperate cry had immensely worried the Kaio. While staring at the Saiyan woman running towards her, a glow emanated from behind. Upon turning around, she saw a ki blast coming from the Namekian, which is one of the assassins, about to be blasted right towards Jean's face. Turning around also gave Ariel's opponent a chance to strike her in the back, so now she had to make an important decision in just a brief moment. She didn't even think about it. The Saiyan's blade would stab Ariel through the back, leaving it stuck there while the Kyle just ran off towards the Namekian. She screamed with a mix of worry for Jean's safety and pain. Only in the nick of time would she arrive close enough to punch the Namekian right in the face, punching him the hardest she could and blasting him off to another room if she could. She was doing everything she could to avoid Jean getting blasted. Sorry for yelling at you earlier. Said a weaker hurt gets calmer. Ariel, look at me. You don't want to end up like me, right? She tried giving her a thumbs up while having a blade stuck in her back. Despite coughing up a bit of blood, she smiled at her new friend. Yeah, so that's another thing I'd like to bring up. Throughout this portion of the log, Ariel is actually fighting. Not out of choice, because she has to. And I'm glad that Veden went this way, but I had concerns of it ruining her pacifistic nature as a character. But I've talked to Veden about it. Veden was happy with the outcome of the log, especially this part 2. So I'm glad that the character progression here is amazing, and that Ariel really that Veden really liked the log itself. So I'm actually happy that Veden is happy and that things worked out the way it did. Some of the things I want to talk about. Dav is a dominating force. Well, he was supposed to be a dominating force in this log. He comes in after the Icer dies. Everything seems to be slowing down The two assassins are taken care of. The Icer assassin is dead. Cordio and Saliath are getting off the high of battle and trying to just relax, calm down. And Saliath was furious, rising anger from for a very long time because everyone around him is dying, or people he knows are dying. Like there was a whole like block of like warehouses that got exploded, like blown up, destroyed because of him. No, I shouldn't say because of him. It was to lure him out and to get the core from him, get information from him. And the Luxoria family has not stopped. At this point, they're desperate to get the core. It's rising. The scale is rising and rising and rising and rising, and they've had enough. There's no more waiting. So Dov slams down to the ground from above with a corpse. He throws the body onto the ground, and those who were part of the conflict, or part of the ruin log, recognize the body as Chocoletta. Yes, her name is silly. That was on purpose. But it was an NPC. I don't want this to lessen the impact of the log itself and what happens, but I just wasn't interested in what I was gonna do with Chocoletta. Because I just didn't think she was that interesting, and because of that, I felt like using this moment as a way to show how strong the Luxoria family is. Chocoletta is beheaded. Dov throws her corpse onto the ground. Goliath, Ariel recognized it. Mistroma recognized it, I believe. Most importantly, Zara recognizes it. Zara had an ability that didn't trigger in the Ruins Law. The trigger of his ability is for his, I think it's left eye. It has to be a left or right eye, so I'm just gonna pick left. If this was an inconsistency, that's my fault. But his left eye was completely black. There was no white, there was no pupils, there was nothing there. It was a pure black eye. And upon seeing Zara's death, after Zara sees Chocolate's corpse, knowing that she was dead, it triggered his ability. And now, I want to say that this doesn't make him tier 3, because I don't really consider it a transformation. To me, it was like more of those ones with narrative strength, kind of like a Hydian's transformation, or like a Viren's Super Saiyan kind of thing. Like just narratively, it was powerful. But Dov has this like shield generator thing that goes around him, and that's what pierces the thing first. Is that Zara gets wings made of pure black energy of ki. I don't think I was clear enough about that. Like it's not genetic. It's just like pure energy of like black wings, and that enabled him to soar faster than he ever did with, what did he use? Look it up now. 26 matches. Give me a second. Okay, yeah, so he pulls out a silver longsword, and it radiated with his energy. I don't think I was clear enough about this either, but it was from a capsule. Every weapon Zara carries is from a capsule. That's how he carries so many weapons. And he has a lot more that I haven't gone into, but he basically launches himself forward with a sword pointing straight, and that's what connects with the shield. The shield shudders, and Dov slams Zara into the ground. And dragging him and then throwing him to the side. He knocks Zara unconscious in one attack, because that was to show how strong Dov was and how he wasn't fucking around. He is one of the higher ups for the Luxoria family. Not the main one. The grandfather is the leader of the Luxoria family, but Dov is one of the stronger ones. And now, Dov, I wanted to be just sympathetically, kind of like what Eichenbaum was talking about with Ymir, although I didn't really get much time to flesh out Dov as a character. He was actually supposed to live, but let me talk about that in a minute. Dov cracks his knuckles. Traitors deserve no honor. They too deserve a son. Even the elderly who cannot take care of themselves. The world exists to be a playground for the strong. I've been part of this game since the start card, as Salias. You have something the Luxoria family wants. Their property. My grandfather. For that, I will do anything necessary to me, including my pathetic sister. Belongs to the family and nobody else. See my ship. Found it. I will kill her. That is unless you hand over. Let me read what Salia responds to. It was almost too quick. First, the sister dropping from the air, then Zara slamming into Dov, only to be grabbed out of nowhere and slammed into the ground. Way too fast. This guy was sick. He was fucking evil. Same strength as Yasir, but with the speed to boot. There were 5 of them, sure, but could they actually take him? His anger was calmed by Cordio's palm resting on his shoulder, and now he was thinking properly and realized that he was pushed into a corner. He looked up at Dov's eyes, scanning them. No, they weren't lying. The situation got a lot worse. They had a hostage. First, it was about protecting the people, but now they had control of that. That would start to shake with anger, the man wanting to scream out in rage to do something. But this wasn't the place. It wasn't the battlefield. He choked on his words for a moment before reaching into his jacket. All right, he said softly as he produced a capsule from his belt, about to click it. What did everyone else want to do? For those who are the uninitiated kind, Lilith is Dov's sister. She is not an Ascended in a family full of Ascended people. not everyone in the Luxoria family is ascended, but those are usually people who are adopted in, are brought into the family separately from being born into. Everyone who's born into the family is ascended. That's just how their family works, and I will say why later. But Lilith is the exception to the rule. She is not an ascendant. In fact, she thinks she's normal. She thinks she's a human. But Lilith was left at the lab, Sal's lab, which I do want to do a log on. I want to see if Sal wants to do something about that soon. To be like a prelude to destruction. But there is a spy that works for Sal's company, and he, I believe, is the reason why Lilith is captured, because Goliath isn't around. He's at the hospital, making sure everyone else is okay and checking on them and all this other stuff. But because of that, Lilith gets taken, and she's taken to Dov's ship. Now, Dov's ship isn't part of the main force. Dov's ship is separate, and that's also, I think, going to be a separate log that I'm going to be doing with Sal's ship. But Dawn Trail came out, so some other things. Moving forward, so Dov's like, unplug my fan. Let me fix it. So Dov's like, you're all weak. I'm an evil bastard. You're all going to die if you don't give me the. And everyone's starting to react to it. Let me read what Jean says. Actually, before I read what Jean says, I want to mention that Nostromo finally arrived. He tried to get Zara away from Dov, but it doesn't really work because Dov is stronger than really strong, and he doesn't even move from what Nostromo tries to do. He creates like a shockwave, and Dov feet don't even move from the ground, standing there firm. I wish Miss Stroma, okay, so, talk about this a little bit. I know this is going a little bit off track from story progression in the log, but I really tried to get Miss Stroma in there as soon as possible for both of the days that we did this. It's actually unfortunate. Miss Stroma did just enough that I think warranted him a red and then a couple of greens. I wish I could have given him more, but honestly, because of him being late and not being there, trying to get him to come, it's just how it is. And it's not his fault this time. And it's not his fault. He was busy dealing with, I believe, sick kids or something of the like, and so I don't blame him for missing. I'm not, pissing on him. I'm not trying to piss on Nostromo. I actually am sorry he missed it, but we were all scheduled for these 2 days, and that's just what ended up happening. Moving forward, I would like to read Jean's next post here. After all that, although I will mention Cordia, my character, is really confused because he's like, what's the core? Why is it important? And that's that's quite a guy. And then he was like, oh, there's a new guy, Mistrilla. He's quite a guy, I guess. My character here really is just confused because he does not have any stakes in the Luxoria conflict, and I kind of regret bringing Cordio into this. I shouldn't have brought him into the arc, and I plan to bring him out of it too. My decision, I've already decided to do this, and I know how I'm going to do it, but I don't want to talk about that here. Spoilers! So Jean and Ariel make their way out of the hospital after they save some civilians, trying to save civilians because he was collapsing. They're doing their best to get the civilians out of there. Jean made some unfortunate rolls, but she still got some people out. They couldn't get everyone, so that means potentially hundreds of people died on this night. Very fucked up, but what can you do? It actually kind of reminded me of the opening to Super Android 13, the movie, where they're in a hospital and then Goku, Krillin, and everyone else is carrying 500 people each. Anyways, Jean followed after Ariel, reaching the scene just in time to see everything go down. From Goliath and Cordial's beat-up states to the corpse, Ariel's rising power at the site. Oh, actually, let me go read that first. Ariel's worries completely went away the moment she grabbed Jean's hand. Using her strength, she pulled her out. Normally, it'd be easier for her, but she was not in a good state right now. Something very common for her nowadays. Her hand hurt like hell from putting so much effort in, but she, as usual, pulled through, even if it meant hurting herself a bit more. After pulling her out, Ariel sighed, and they unexpectedly got hugged. It hugged the half-breed back, and though she was relieved, she was still in pain. Not just physically, but because of how her friend must have felt during those moments. Despite all the pain, however, it always felt good to save someone. There are people there. There are people that couldn't be saved, but this time she saved their friend. It was the first time. You don't need to apologize. You were in a moment of weakness. The experience made you stronger and more capable to help others. In the end, we'll all end up helping each other, so no need to promise me anything. Ariel patted Jean's head before letting go of the hug and heading towards the other part of the hospital where Sal and Cordia were. Without being able to sense Key, she had no idea what was going on. But knowing Sal and Cordia, she expected their opponent to be dead, and with the two being okay upon arriving to the scene, her suspicions were confirmed. Though she didn't expect them to be so hurt, what she did expect was to see the corpse of someone she had already saved, referring to Chocoletta. Her eyes went blank. She stared at the corpse and blanked out. Her ears rang much like they did back on Angiello when she saw the results of extreme violence displayed right in front of her very own eyes. This was a different scenario. Practically the same situation, except this person was someone she knew. It was a headless corpse, but she remembered the body shape of Sarah's sister, Chocoletta. Remembered how glad they were being able to walk out of that contract they should have never signed. And now she was dead. Just like that. Ariel had no idea how the siblings were related to this. She wasn't even looking at the man who presumably murdered her. In fact, she was looking at nothing while internally she struggled. One thought in her mind. Why do I save people if they're going to die anyways? The peaceful Kaio clenched the sword that was in her back earlier. For the first time in her life, she was starting to slowly power up. It was not a conscious decision. Her body was instinctively answering to the world's crimes, and it was tired of not being heard loud enough. Can I just say that the last little line there, the last last two lines are fucking raw. Like it is so peak. Let me just reiterate this by saying this, by reading that again. The peaceful Kaio clenched the sword that was in her back earlier. For the first time in her life, she was starting to slowly power up. It was not a conscious decision. Her body was instinctively answering to this world's crime, and it was tired of not being heard loud enough. That last sentence, oh my god. I didn't okay, so reading through this again, for this review, I just wanted to say that it's probably one of the rawest things Ariel has ever put onto paper, or on the page rather, because we're not writing on paper. That would be kind of crazy. But it gets even fucking better than that. And for this review, I will not be reading it out loud. I will be talking about it, but I will not be reading it, because I think what happens after this is something that you, the person watching this, should just go read. And I am not joking. And you can't see my hand movements, but I'm making hand movements because of how hype it is. But I'm going to go back to Jean's now and read that. Jean followed after Ariel, reaching the scene just in time to see everything go down. From Goliath and Cordio's beat-up states to the corpse, to Ariel's rising power at the sight of it, and to the sight of three people she did not know coming to blows. Most importantly, she heard the words of the man she did not know spoke. Those words, they served to fuel the fire burning in Jean's soul. You could not let them go unanswered. She stood there, hands clenching into fists at her sides so hard that her own nails broke skin. Blood trickling between her fingers, her eyes narrowed. A burning spite aimed at the stranger. Her breathing grew quick and shallow. How dare you! I will not be doing a 15-year-old teenager girl voice, by the way, so I hope you're disappointed in that. Hiazi. I've said Hiazi since 2016, rather, so get over it. Also, one hand unclenched and accusatory finger pointing at Dov. A playground for the strong? You don't understand the way things work one bit. I was weak once. I was small, powerless. Then someone I love with all my heart now stood in front of me and told me they'd get me out of there. The strong, it's not their job to be callous, to discard the weak. It's their job to protect them, stand in the way of those who would do harm to them, to give them the time they need, to find their strength and stand on their own. If you don't even get that, you're the one standing in the way. And every single time, people like us, the truly strong, will cut you down to build a path forward for everyone to a world where there is no weak, there is no strong, just people living alongside each other to have a happier tomorrow. Someone who spoke as Dov did would always be Jean's sworn enemy. Never met the man in her life, but she knew all she really needed to know. He had proven himself as wicked as one could be. Now, this is where we get into Ariel's next post. I will not be reading this verbatim like I have for some of the other posts, but I will talk about this. There was some discussion on Discord at this point to talk about what to do next. Because at this point, before Ariel's next post, I was talking about how to remove Cordio from the equation because it was just Bob, who was played by me. Hypo had left at this point because he had finished his side of things. He finished his side of the narration. And so I was left with Dav, who was another tier 2 or tier 3 character that is the second tier 3 villain of this log. I'm trying to clarify that so everyone knows what happens next. I was talking to everyone. I was like, okay, I think Cordio should get blasted or wounded or knocked unconscious or injured or something, so I can remove him from the equation so we can do this fight, I think, fairly, so I'm not like being unfair or biased to myself in the text. But ultimately, it led to this moment from Ariel. Powers up insanely, crazily. Wind is blowing. Her energy skyrockets higher than it's ever been to be as strong as a tier 4 hypo. Why? Because this is a tier break. And while there was much discussion about this tier break in Discord, he ultimately decided that it would be one because of what happens. At first, it was just Ariel using a bunch of fucking energy, but we decided, basically collectively, that it was a tier break. Ariel is pissed, angry, emotional. What happens? Energy peaks. The devices that were disrupting sensory, people being able to sense, they all break in unison, one exploding after the other. They were peppered throughout the area, hidden in a bunch of spots, but it was all for naught as Ariel's energy destroys them. It peaks. It skyrockets. Her emotions are the highest they've ever been. Her ordeals, desires, has nothing to do with this. She doesn't want this. She's forced into this. And she takes the sword that was once stabbed into her back, raises it, and from the blade, her energy peaks through it, lifting into the sky, gaining extreme height. It was a mass of Ariel's energy, and she swings down at Dov. This is not forbidden, by the way. I'm talking like this on purpose. Dov doesn't know what to do. He doesn't even see it coming until it's too late. The shield activates that was around him, but it breaks very quickly, and he holds onto it with his arms and is doing the best he can to push back. And this is the reveal of something I have kept secret for a very long time, since the start of the arc. Dov goes, it's the only thing he could do to push against Ariel's force. He didn't want to use it right at that second, but he was forced into that position. And he didn't have much choice, because he tries to dodge at the very last second before he was being cut into. He dodges. The blade goes right through his midsection, cutting him in half. The last thing Dov managed to do was push a button that was on the inside of his jacket, holding it in his hand as his corpse lay dead in half. Ariel kills Dov in this moment, out of pure anger, rage, distress, trauma, emotion. At this moment, Ariel killed someone with her own power, as she said. And also, she shortened the log. Now, to mention, Dov wasn't supposed to die, but I felt it would have been unfair to Ariel, to Veden, if I had him dodge and only lose like an arm. So I had Dov die. And there was supposed to be this big-ass fight with Dov, fighting everyone else, and kicking everyone's ass. That was the whole point, but I'm honestly happy that it ended up like this with Ariel's huge moment. There's way more to that than what I explained. Like you have to read it. Like I said, it's pretty far down, but my credit, it's like the second to last post of like all the RP. The last post isn't as long as the other two, but it's still something I wish you guys would. I'm not going to spoil the exact text here. Like I said, I'm not reading this verbatim. I was just explaining what happened in detail. I think the actual stuff that is written here is way more amazing than I could ever explain to anybody else. So I just want you to keep that in mind. Now that I got that over with, I want to talk about what happens after. And this is turning out to be a very long video. Recording time right now is 1 hour 2 minutes, but I got stuff to cut out, so it's going to be shortened a little bit. Anyways, Dov dies. He pushes a button. The aftermath is simple. The Luxoria family ships on Cloak. Every single one of them. How long have they been there? Have they been there long? Short time? Just now? Who knows? But they've been there. We're there. Maybe they just got there. They all on Cloak, feeling a mass of ships with one large ship in the center, with one large ship in the front, several medium ships, and a bunch of smaller ones. It's wartime. They will get the core. Family is not waiting anymore. There's no more sending assassins, no more sending other people to family. It's time to fight. Goliath fucked up. At least that's what was sent to him privately on this device. They all go on to get to stadium for healing. No more hospitals. The stadium was the safest place they could be. That's where they end up. Now, that's the end of the log. However, I want to talk about the stuff that's going forward. There is not much left to the arc. In fact, for the final log, I was just going to simplify it. For the war, I was going to use the ships as a set piece, a background, and not focus on it too much, but talk about how it impacted the city and what's going on in the city initially, and then move on to individual fights. That would be in separate logs, for however many people are there. But in one of Rizion's recent videos, he said he would like to get involved to NPC and stuff. And I have yet to talk to him about this. I don't even know if he's going to watch this video. But if Riz wants to get involved, I think I can extend the arc a little bit longer. I can separate the city being attacked and then the individual fights into different logs. They'll be at different points in time. Because there is one thing that I don't want to skip over. Maybe Riz can help with this if he wants to play this part. Is that at this point, I believe the EDF would get involved. Because there is no way in fucking hell that the EDF would let this large-scale attack against another city on Earth without interfering and leaving it to just Alliance. I was originally going to pull back on it, removing the ships from the equation, and then just having something way simpler, but I would like to keep the ships there, so that's what's going to happen. However, again, I need to talk to Riz, but I'll see if we can come up with something to have him NPC and see what he can or cannot offer to what I have planned. There are 2 logs, like I mentioned earlier, that I would like to work on at some point soon. One of them being Goliath rescuing Lilith from Dobbs' ship, and then another preluding how Lilith got kidnapped in the first place. But perhaps it doesn't even matter, the first one, or the how Lilith got kidnapped. That could just be a mystery and explored in the log where Lilith gets rescued. I don't know yet, but it's something I do want to do first before moving forward with the big logs. But I'd like to try and keep the scope baller still, so that way we don't end up with another situation where another log is way too large for someone else to handle. And, you know, the fact that I was told to review it, which I know the RP Summit is tomorrow, but I just want to mention that it was kind of controversial. Like, it was kind of controversial for me to be told to go review this log because of the fact that I am in it. However, I do not mind, personally. I just was concerned that Cordio, my character, I would be unfair with. And that was settled between me and my friends who did this log. So I had to explain to them that, look, I get that you guys are worrying about me and like talking about me and all this other stuff, but unless I actually have a serious problem and cannot handle it, please don't like get mad at for my sake, because I'm fine with this. I'm okay with this. And I understand that where you guys are coming from, saying that they could review it with enough time, but Riz made a good point. I believe it was Riz that made a good point about this, is that it would slow down the review for other logs that exist and take way too long to handle. Whereas someone like me, I shouldn't admit this, but I'm going to. I don't work, so I have all the time in the world to be able to do this in my own time. And that's all I'm going to say about the controversy, because the RP Summit's tomorrow, and there'll be a lot of talking and a lot of stuff mentioned. However, there is actually something I will be presenting tomorrow to the public about Reds. And I am excited to reveal it because I put a lot of work into it, and that is for tomorrow, so stay tuned on that. And that is everything I have to say about this log and stuff that I have planned and everything else. I guess final words would be, I'm really fucking proud of everyone in this. Like, Goliath was fucking incredible. The way he handled everything, the way the combat was, and how his character reacted to everything, and how he wrote out these scenes was genuinely fucking amazing. Sorry for my language throughout this video, but I'm just impressed. And Ariel, oh my fucking god, Ariel! If I could give her more than 5 reds in a log, I fucking would have given her 7 reds. I only gave her 5, but I think she deserves fucking 7 reds. 7 greens, 7 reds. Because of what she does and how she does things and what happens genuinely throughout. Like, I genuinely wish I could give her 7. Jean did excellent, which is why I gave Jean 6 reds. Or why I gave Jean 6 greens and 4 reds. I was impressed with her character progression, the fighting she did, her reactions to the environment, and everything else I felt like was worth it. I don't think it was as good as what Goliath and Ariel put into the log, but it was fucking amazing, and I'm glad it turned out that way. For my character, again, I am not going to grade my writing, because I don't think it's fair for me to do that. However, I honestly think Cordio should have gotten 5.3. That is just me. Maybe someone else would disagree, which everyone does. All my friends did. They all told me 6.4, 6.4, 6.4. I'm like, okay, Jesus Christ, I'll do it. Fine. I will go with what you guys said. So that is what I did in that regard. And Mastroma didn't really have time to shine, but for what he was there for, he did really good. Which is why he got 3 greens and 1 red. That's what I decided on. Again, wish I could have given him more, but that is everything I have to say. That's it. And actually, there's one more thing. I just want to mention this again. The log with BB code, it's 5 pages. Without BB code, it is still 40 pages. 40 pages is absolute insanity. I just want to mention that, and I apologize that it ended up the way it did, being too big. I didn't really think about it at the time, which is why I'm kind of glad that that Shattered Atmospheres finale, The Beast Rises and The Beast Falls, are separate, because it would have been a similar situation and would have taken probably longer to review if it was all one giant log. Again, I'm going to try separating these, but this is actually the last thing I had to say. I'm signing out. I have other things I gotta do. I want to play Dawn Trail. The final recording time is 1 hour, 12 minutes, 59 seconds.